welcome to the Blindfold Chess Podcast.
This week, we are looking at the time the youngest women's world champion, a 13-time Olympiad Gold Medal winner, the second woman in history to be awarded the Grandmaster title, and a women's world champion for 13 years, Maia Chiburdanidze. She was born in Kutaisi of the Georgian Soviet Socialist Republic of the USSR in 1961, where she learned to play chess at the age of 8. She played and won at the 1974 Brasov Women's International Tournament when she was 13 years old. At the age of 15, she won the USSR Girls Championship of 1976. The next year, at the age of 16, she won the USSR Womens Championship with a score of 13 out of 17. Later that same year, she played in the Tbilisi Women's Interzonal Tournament. At the time, there were two Interzonal tournaments, one in Roosendaal, Netherlands, and the other in Tbilisi, USSR. At each tournament, the top 3 finishers qualified for the women's candidate match. Maia finished in second, half a point behind the winner, but that was enough to be invited to the 8-player knockout tournament. In round 1 of the 1977 Candidates Tournament, Chiburdanidze defeated Nana Alexandria 5.5 to 4.5. In round 2, she defeated Elena Akhmilovskova, I think I got that, 6.5 to 5.5. And in the championship match, she faced one of the 2 non-Soviet players of the tournament, Alla Kushner, defeating her 7.5 to 6.5, earning her way to the 1978 World Championship match against the current world champion and fellow Georgian Nona Gaprindashvili, who had been the world champion for the past 16 years. In the 15-game match, Chiburdanidze won games 4 and 5, she lost game 7, she won game 9, lost game 11, and won game 13. So she emerged victorious with a score of 8.5 to 6.5 to dethrone Gaprindashvili and to become the youngest player to win the Women's World Championship at the age of 17. This is what started a 13-year reign where Chiburdanidze was at the top of the world in women's chess. In 1981, it was a close contest between Maia and Nana Alexandria, also of the Soviet Union. The match went the full length, each player winning 4 games, but after the 16 games, the match was still tied 8 to 8, and per the rules of the match, Chiburdanidze retained her title. In 1984, she had a bit of an easier time against Irina Levitina, also from the Soviet Union, where Chiburdanidze won 5 games to finish the match on game 14 with a score of 8.5 to 5.5. After this tournament, she was awarded the Grandmaster title, only the second woman to do so by virtue of becoming the women's world champion. In 1986, she won by the same 8.5 to 5.5 score in 14 games against Elena Akhmilovskova, again of the Soviet Union, winning the first, 5th, 7th, and 8th games, only losing in Game 9. In the January 1988 Top 100 rated FIDE players, Maia was at her peak rating of 2560, placing 45th on the list. Later that year, she defended her title once again against Nona Iosliani, also from the Soviet Union. This was a closer match for Chiburdanidze, where she edged out an 8.5 to 7.5 victory. In 1991, the world champion challenger was a relatively unknown Chinese player, Ji Jun. Jun struck first by winning Game 3. Chiburdanidze tied it in Game 4. Then Maia took the lead in Game 5. The match was tied after Jun's win in Round 8. Jun pulled ahead again with a victory in Game 11 and 13, and ending the match after 15 games with an 8.5 to 6.5 score to dethrone Chiburdanidze to become the women's world champion. Maia's 13-year reign was the 3rd longest in women's history, behind Vera Menchik of 17 years and Nona Gaprindashvili of 16 years. She tried to reclaim her title in 1993, but could not make it out of the candidates tournament, where she placed third. She reached the finals of the 1995 candidates tournament, but lost to Susan Polgar. In 1997, she tried again, placing fourth in the candidates tournament. The structure was then changed to a 64-person knockout tournament in the year 2000. That year, she made it to round 2 before being knocked out. In 2001 and in 2004, she made it to the semifinals. In 2006, she made it to the quarterfinals. In 2008, she lost in the first round. And in her last candidates tournament of 2010, she was knocked out after the second round. During her playing career, she was not only a world champion and a perpetual player in the candidates tournament, she also participated in a record-breaking number of chess Olympiads. At the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, and 27th Women's Olympiad, she was on board one of the Women's Soviet team, winning gold every time. At the 28th and 29th Olympiad, she finished second for the Soviet Union, earning silver. And then after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, Maia became the team lead for the newly formed Georgian team. While at the helm, her team took home gold in the 30th, 31st, 32nd, and 38th Olympiads. At the 33rd Olympiad, Georgia took home bronze, and at the 34th, they took home silver. Over her Olympiad career, spanning from 1978 to 2008, she played in 167 games, over 15 Olympiads, only losing 5 games. She took home 9 individual medals, 4 gold, 2 silver, and 3 bronze. She also took home a record 13 team medals with 9 gold, 3 silver, and 1 bronze. In 2011, she played her last classical game, and currently at the age of 64, she is considered an inactive player. In 2014, she was inducted into the World Chess Hall of Fame in St. Louis, Missouri. For the game this week, we are turning the clocks back 50 years to the USSR Womens Championship of 1973, where we're looking at one of Maia's first tournaments when she was 12 years old. Maia Chiburdanidze versus Olga Andreieva. Now, if we're ready, let's begin.
1. Pawn to e4. Pawn to c5. Two. Pawn to c3. Knight f6. Three. Pawn to e5. Knight d5. Four. Pawn to d4. Pawn c captures d4. Five. Pawn c captures d4. Pawn to d6. Six. Knight f3. Knight c6. Seven. Knight c3. Knight captures c3. Eight. Pawn b captures c3. Pawn d captures e5. 9. Pawn to d5. Pawn to e4.
After the move e4, what two pieces are under attack? The black knight is under attack on c6 from the pawn that is on d5, and the white knight on f3 is under attack by the pawn that is on e4.
10. Knight g5. Knight e5. (11) Knight captures e4. Queen c7.
The move queen to c7 is a little tricky. What is black trying to do? The pawn that is on c3 is a little bit weak for white, and it would also lead to check with the rook possibly hanging on a1. So the queen to c7 is targeting those, while also setting up black for a move like pawn to f5 or bishop to f5 to drive the knight on e4 away, which is protecting the pawn on c3, so the queen can get to that pawn. So with those threats in mind, how would you play this position as white?
(12) Queen d4. Bishop d7. (13) Bishop a3.
What does the move bishop to a3 accomplish for white in this position? Not only is it developing a piece for white, but it is also putting pressure on the d6 square in case white wants to push the pawn forward. It's also cramping black a little bit so they can't play like a natural looking pawn e7 to e6, because then white can play bishop captures f8, which prevents black from being able to castle on the king side, which is arguably safer than black having to castle on the queen side.
Pawn to f6. (14) Pawn to d6. Queen c6. (15) Pawn d captures e7. Bishop captures e7. (16) Bishop captures e7. King captures e7. (17) Queen b4. King f7. (18) Pawn to f4. Rook h to e8. (19) Pawn f captures e5. Rook captures e5.
Maia currently has her knight hanging on e4, where it is pinned to the king that is on e1. You have your queen on b4 defending it, but black is attacking it twice with the queen on c6 and the rook that is on e5. If you were in Maia's position, what would you do here?
Castle queenside. Rook captures e4. Rook captures d7 check. King e8. Rook e7 check. Black resigns.
Black resigned here since they don't have any good option out of this. You either have two main decisions as black. Either move your king to either d8 or f8, or you can capture the rook that is on e7. So if black were to play rook captures e7, what would white play? White would play bishop on f1 to b5, pinning the black queen to c6, essentially winning white a queen. If black were to play either king to d8 or king to f8, what would you do as white? In that case, you could play rook captures e4, and now you're up a full rook, while black has no compensation for it. Just a cute little tactical shot to end the game. Becoming the youngest woman to win the Women's World Championship, sitting atop of the world of women's chess for 13 years, climbing back up the mountain to play in 8 different candidates tournaments, playing in a record 15 Olympiads to win a record number of medals with 13, and becoming the second woman in history to earn the Grandmaster title, Maia Chiburdanidze has been a remarkable influence for chess players across the globe. So that is all that we have for this week. Tune in next time, where we will continue to work on our blindfold skills and look at another game of the Masters.